Hey, these are your notes for 8-5. This is Mrs. Norris, and this is the law of sines and cosines. So the law of sines is typed out for you on your notes page. So let's just figure out what they're saying here. They're making ratios about the sine of the angle over the side opposite the angle. So if angle A is the angle that we're talking about, then obviously little a is the side across from it. If angle B is this angle we're talking about, then little b is the side across from it, and same with C and uppercase C or angle C. So we can write a relationship for all three, but you're only going to use two. And I'm going to show you how to figure out which ones to use. So let's start with this example here. This example asks us to find the measure of angle P. So we can write the law of sines using these letters instead. So let's use capital P, little p. And what else are we given in the picture? Well, we're given capital N. We're also given little n. So obviously when I write my sine over the side, it's going to look like this. Sine angle P over lowercase p, or side P, is equal to sine of uppercase N, or angle N, over lowercase n, or side N. Okay? What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and substitute. Sine P is the unknown, so I write that. Little p is 10 inches, so I write that there, side P. Sine N is the same as the sine of 36 degrees. We can figure that out on our calculator. All over side N, which is 7. Now, if you multiply, to get sine P by itself, which is our unknown, we just have to take that 10 and get rid of it. And since it's on the bottom, we're going to multiply both sides by 10. That cancels that one, and we're left with sine of P equals 10 times the sine of 36, and I always put my sine values in parentheses so you remember to type them in like that, all over 7. What we're going to do next is, remember, when the angle is unknown, you use the inverse. So we're going to do measure of angle P equals the inverse sine of, and I'm just going to draw an arrow so we don't have to write all that out again. When I type that in on my calculator, inverse sine, parenthesis 10 times sine 36 divided by 7, I get the measure of angle P is approximately 57 degrees, and that's the answer. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is something simple. I'll do number 1 for you. You'd literally type in the cosine of 104 degrees. We're just going to advance to having obtuse angles. No longer are they acute. And what you're going to notice is when you have an obtuse angle, you get a negative cosine value. Negative 0.24. Go ahead and try the other two, and we'll talk about the pattern that we see tomorrow. Number 4, I want you to first recognize what we're given in the problem. If I want TU, and I have an uppercase S over here, then let's start by just labeling that little s. You can always use a cursive or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you use a lowercase. If I need to find S, and I'm given what we call side and two angles, then you're going to use the law of sines. So you're going to write the sine of the angle you have, which is S, over the side you want, equals, and you just got to figure out which other one am I given. Well, I'm given U. So I'm going to do the sine of U over little u, which is 18. Let me change that to U there. Okay, so let's do our substitution now. We're going to do the sine of 64 degrees all over our unknown, or S, is equal to the sine of 41 degrees all over our known value of U, which is 18. Remember, the little letter goes with the side opposite the angle. When we cross multiply this to find S, we're going to recognize that S is right next to the sine of 41 degrees, and that 18 times is going to get multiplied by the sine of 64. And you should see that in order to get this S, which is our variable, by itself, we're going to divide both sides by the sine of 41. So hopefully you have a calculator there. You can even use your cell phone. Most of them have sine functions on there nowadays. You can type in this right here into your calculator, and you should get an approximate value of S of 24.7. And they've asked us to round the length to the nearest tenth and the angle to the nearest degree. So that's the law of sines in a nutshell. Why don't you try... no, I'm not going to have you try one. Sorry. Just watch me do this next example. Okay, number 5. Let's do this quickly. So the measure of angle E is what we're finding. Since the measure of angle E is right here, we know that this guy is little e, and we know that this one is little g. And obviously they're giving us the measure of angle G. So we're going to write the law of sines as the sine of the angle over the side opposite it equals the sine of the angle over the side opposite that angle. When we substitute, it's going to look like this. The sine of 102 degrees over G, which is 42 inches, is equal to the sine of E, which is our unknown, all over 26. Now, since our unknown is a sine, we're going to multiply both sides in this case to get to our variable by 26. When we do that, we're going to have just the sine of E left over here. So I'm going to write it as the sine of E. What do we have left on the left side? Well, we have a 26 being multiplied by a sine of 102, then being divided by a 42. So the measure of angle E is equal to the inverse sine of, as usual, whatever that is in our calculator. So if you're trying this out, use your phone if you have to. Inverse sine of 26 times the sine of 102, close parentheses, divided by 42. And you should get approximately 37 degrees. Okay, let's get a couple of examples for the law of cosines. The law of cosines is written 3 different ways, and it's based off which angle you need or which side you need. So if you need either of the A's, you use the top one. If you need either of the B's, you use the second one, etc. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at this example here. So I want you to think about for a minute what they're asking you to find. They're asking you to find HK. So if we're using our lowercase notation, we're going to call that by a little j. And what happens here is we know that we're going to write this squared for the law of cosine, j squared. And we're going to write, I'm just going to go ahead and substitute here, the other two sides. If you want to call them k and h, you can. 17 squared plus 14 squared minus 2 times 17 times 14 times the cosine of the angle. What angle do we have to put there? Well, the one that matches this letter. So we have to put j in there. So it's the cosine of 50 degrees. Okay, plugging this right in our calculator, we recognize that we can just type in all of that into the square root. And when you do that, you get that j, little j, or hk as it's called in the problem, is approximately 13.4 feet. And that's the answer to that. So let's evaluate real quick. How do we know which one to use? So you're going to use the law of sines if you're given either 2 angle measures and any side length, or you're given 2 side lengths and A is not the included angle. Okay, so let's contrast that to which one you're going to use for the law of cosines. You use the law of cosines if you have two side lengths in the included angle measure, that's SAS by the way, or if you have all three side lengths. So if you're given a situation where you have an angle between the two sides, you use the law of cosines. Or if you're given all three sides, you use the law of the law of sines for actually any other situation. That's all we're going to do for tonight. See you tomorrow.